The mountain man inherited his uncle's cabin. A woman arrived saying, "I was promised to him, now I'm yours." Below him, the forest stretched endlessly, a sea of green that shimmered under the soft light of the planet's twin suns. He had grown up hearing stories of the wilderness, of his uncle's legendary survival skills, but nothing in his life had prepared him for the reality of this place. He adjusted the strap of his backpack and took a deep breath, inhaling the sharp scent of pine mixed with something strange, almost electric. This was his inheritance, his uncle's cabin, perched on the edge of civilization, yet deep enough into the forest that the world beyond seemed like a memory. Elias had always been a man of solitude. People rarely understood him, and that was just how he liked it. The cabin itself was a simple wooden structure, weathered by time but standing strong. The roof had patches of moss, and the stone chimney looked like it had survived 100 storms. Elias pushed open the creaking door, and the smell of old wood and lingering smoke welcomed him. He stepped inside, his boots leaving prints on the dusty floorboards. "This is home," he murmured to himself. The cabin was bare, almost painfully simple. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a table and 2 chairs sat awkwardly in the center, and shelves lined the walls, holding jars of herbs, dried fruits, and the remnants of a life spent in quiet isolation. Elias ran his fingers over the shelves, feeling the faint pulse of history beneath his touch. His uncle had been a man of mystery, leaving little record of his life, but enough to make someone like Elias feel both connected and challenged. He set down his pack and pulled out a small notebook, the last gift his uncle had left for him. Inside were sketches of plants, maps of the surrounding forest, and strange symbols that Elias didn't recognize. He flipped through the pages carefully, imagining his uncle walking these same paths, cataloging the world in a way only he could. Elias had expected nothing more than solitude and hard work when he accepted the inheritance. Living off the land was second nature to him. Hunting, gathering, building shelters, it was all familiar. But something in the notebook hinted at something more, something hidden that his uncle had never spoken about. He had spent the morning unpacking, arranging the cabin to his liking, when the sound of a distant engine broke the silence. Elias froze, instinct immediately kicking in. He had not seen another human in days, and in a place this remote, any visitor was either desperate or dangerous. He stepped outside, squinting against the sun, and watched as a sleek pod descended from the sky, landing with a soft hum on a flat clearing nearby. Elia's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt. He had learned early that the unknown could be deadly. The pod's hatch opened, and a woman stepped out. She was tall, with long hair the color of midnight, and eyes that seemed to study him with an intensity that made him uneasy. She wore a simple jumpsuit, but it was clearly from another world, something he had never seen before. "I was promised to him," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Now I'm yours." Elias blinked. "Excuse me." She took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. "Your uncle, he promised me to him. You are his heir. That promise, it now belongs to you." He stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or draw his knife. I don't understand. Who are you? Why are you here?" "My name is Lyra," she said, "and I have traveled across worlds to fulfill a promise. It was made long before either of us were born. I do not mean to harm you. I mean only to honor what was promised." Elias studied her carefully. She did not seem like a threat, at least not in the way he had been trained to recognize threats, but the weight of her words and the certainty in her eyes unsettled him. "You came all this way for a promise?" he asked, incredulous. She nodded. "Yes, your uncle, he recognized something about humans that others do not. Courage, loyalty, adaptability, the kind of qualities that make humans unique." Elias felt a flicker of pride but also irritation. "So, I inherit a cabin and a stranger. That's convenient." Lyra smiled faintly. "I did not come to make your life difficult. I came because it was meant to be. And because I trust your uncle's judgment, you are human. That means you can handle what comes next." Elias did not answer. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him into the cabin. He needed to understand her better, but more importantly, he needed to understand why his life had suddenly grown so complicated. Inside, they sat at the wooden table. Elias poured them both a cup of water from a ceramic jug, and Lyra accepted it without hesitation. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the creak of the cabin and the distant whisper of the forest outside. Finally, Elias asked, "What happens now?" Lyra looked out the window, her gaze drifting over the towering trees. "Now we prepare. Your uncle left more than a cabin. He left tools, knowledge, and secrets. There are things in this forest that have been waiting for someone like you to come along." "Things?" Elias frowned. "Like what? Animals, monsters, ghosts?" She shook her head. "Worse and better than that. This forest, it is alive in ways you cannot imagine. And it responds to humans in ways other species cannot. Your uncle understood this. You will too if you are willing to learn." Elias leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He had faced wild animals, storms, and hunger. He had survived because he could think, adapt, and endure. But this was something different, something that felt larger than him, larger than the universe he knew. "I don't know if I'm ready for whatever that is," he admitted. Lyra's eyes softened. "You don't have to be. That's the point. You don't have to be ready. You just have to act. Humans have a gift. They can face the unknown and survive. They can make impossible things possible. Your uncle believed that, and so do I." Elias considered her words. He had spent his life alone, yet he felt a strange sense of destiny in her presence. It was as if the universe had nudged him toward this moment, testing his courage in a way he could not yet understand. The rest of the day passed in a mixture of exploration and quiet tension. Elias showed Lyra the cabin, the small garden his uncle had cultivated, and the edge of the forest where the trees grew thick and tall. Lyra moved with confidence, touching plants and stones as if she could feel their history. She pointed out patterns in the forest, hints of hidden paths, and subtle shifts in the air that Elias had never noticed before. By nightfall, the sky above the cabin was a canvas of stars, more brilliant than Elias had ever seen. He built a fire and the two of them sat across from it, the flames dancing in their eyes. "You'll see," Lyra said softly, "that humans are special. Other species, they cannot survive here like we can. They cannot adapt the way we do. You have no idea what's waiting for you." Elias nodded, feeling both fear and excitement. He had inherited more than a cabin. He had inherited a world of possibilities, challenges, and mysteries. And now, with Lyra by his side, he knew that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. As he stared into the fire, Elias realized something important. Survival was not enough. To truly thrive in this wilderness, he would have to trust in himself, in Lyra, and in the strange, living forest around him. And somehow, deep down, he knew he could do it. Humans always found a way. The night deepened, and the forest around the cabin seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm, as if acknowledging their presence. Elias felt a connection to this place, a bond forged by blood, history, and the promise of the unknown. Tomorrow, he thought, everything would begin. And he was ready. The next morning, Elias woke to a strange light filtering through the cabin windows. The sun had risen high over the twin mountains, but there was a shimmer in the air, almost like a curtain of fine silver threads weaving through the trees. He rubbed his eyes and stepped outside, where the forest seemed different. "Good morning," Lyra said softly, already standing near the edge of the clearing. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. "You'll want to see this." Elias followed her into the forest. The air was thick with a sweet, earthy scent that made his lungs fill with energy. Birds of unfamiliar shapes and colors flitted through the branches, but their movement was not random. They seemed aware. "Do you feel it?" Lyra asked. He shook his head. "Feel what?" "The forest," she said. "It's alive, and it recognizes humans. Elias frowned. He had survived countless harsh landscapes, but he had never seen a forest that could respond to a person. As he stepped onto a narrow path lined with glowing moss, the branches above seemed to bend slightly, creating an arch as if inviting him forward. "This isn't natural," Elias muttered. Lyra nodded. "It's not. Your uncle discovered something here, something ancient. The forest, it's not just a collection of trees and animals. It's part of a network, a living system left behind by a species long gone. Most beings cannot interact with it. Humans can." Elias looked around skeptically, but then something moved in the corner of his eye. A small vine reached out and recoiled as if testing him. He froze. The vine quivered, then gently wrapped around a low branch, forming a small bridge across a stream. "You see," Lyra whispered, "it listens, it responds. Only humans can guide it." Elias stepped forward cautiously. He had hunted predators bigger than himself and survived storms that flattened whole valleys. But this was different. The forest was alive, yes, but it seemed intelligent, almost playful. They walked deeper, and the forest continued to change around them. Rocks shifted to form steps, streams parted slightly to make crossings easier, and the wind carried whispers that sounded like words if he listened closely. Elias felt a thrill run through him. His uncle had always said humans had a spark that no other species possessed, a spark that allowed them to adapt and overcome. Now, standing in a forest that seemed aware of him, he finally understood. Lyra led him to a small clearing where the ground glowed faintly with an inner light. In the center was a stone pedestal, etched with symbols that pulsed softly. "This is the heart of the forest," Lyra explained. "Your uncle found it. It can awaken the forest in ways that make it protective, but it requires someone who can think, feel, and act like a human, someone unpredictable." Elias approached the pedestal cautiously. His fingers hovered over the carvings. The moment he touched them, the forest reacted. Vines rose from the ground, forming patterns around him. Leaves shimmered with a light of their own, and distant branches bent as if bowing. The forest recognized him. "It's alive," Elias said quietly, awe creeping into his voice. "And it listens to me," Lyra nodded. "Exactly. Most species fail because they try to control it with logic or force. Humans, we improvise. We adapt. That is why the forest responds to us. That is why your uncle trusted us." Elias felt a sense of pride and fear at the same time. The forest was beautiful, yes, but also unpredictable. One wrong move could trigger something dangerous. He studied the patterns in the glowing moss, the pulse of energy in the pedestal, and tried to sense what the forest wanted. Slowly, almost instinctively, he moved his hands in small gestures, and the vines rearranged themselves, forming a narrow path through dense undergrowth. "Humans think in ways machines cannot predict," Lyra said, watching him. "We solve problems they never see coming. That is why we can awaken this forest and survive where others fail." They spent hours exploring, testing the forest's responses. Elias learned that he could guide the vines to clear debris, create bridges, or even form shelters. Small animals seemed to follow his lead, alerting him to dangers hidden among the trees. The forest was not only alive, it was protective. By late afternoon, the sky began to shift. Shadows lengthened and a soft humming filled the air. Lyra's eyes widened. "They're coming," she said. Elias frowned. "Who?" "Others, visitors from beyond the colonies. They know about your uncle's discoveries and they want the forest's power for themselves." Elias felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. Danger was always near in the wild, and he had learned long ago that humans survived by acting, not hesitating. "They won't get it," he said, more to himself than to her. Lyra looked at him, a mixture of fear and admiration in her eyes. "You will see why humans are different. You'll see why your uncle believed in you." As night fell, the forest seemed to pulse with energy. The glowing moss became brighter, forming symbols that Elias recognized from his uncle's notebook. They were warnings or perhaps invitations. He wasn't sure yet. Suddenly, a soft rustle in the trees drew their attention. From the darkness emerged sleek, pale creatures, taller than humans with elongated limbs and luminous eyes. They moved silently, scanning the forest. Lyra stepped beside Elias, her hand brushing his arm in a gesture of reassurance. "They're alien explorers," she whispered. "They underestimate humans. They think we are primitive. They do not understand adaptability." The creatures advanced slowly, and Elias noticed they tried to force the vines aside. The plants resisted, stiffening in protest. Elias raised his hands and the forest responded, creating a barrier of twisted branches and thick vines. The creatures hesitated. "See," Lyra said, her voice fierce. "The forest protects humans, it knows us. It reacts to our presence in ways no machine or alien can predict." Elias felt a surge of determination. He had faced predators before, but this was different. The forest was on his side. He took a deep breath and moved forward, testing his control. Vines slithered across the ground, creating traps and barriers, guiding the intruders into open clearings where Elias could see and anticipate their movements. The aliens faltered, their technology useless against the unpredictable patterns of the forest. Elias smiled, feeling the thrill of survival, of cleverness, and of humanity itself. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest species, but they were adaptable. They could improvise. They could overcome. Hours passed in a tense dance between Elias, Lyra, and the intruders. The forest seemed to respond to every thought, every instinct. Finally, the aliens retreated, muttering in a language Elias could not understand. Their pride wounded, they left the forest, leaving only silence behind. Elias sank to the ground, breathing heavily. His muscles ached, but his heart was alive with excitement. "Humans always find a way," he said quietly, echoing the words of his uncle. Lyra smiled, sitting beside him. "They do," she agreed. "And now you understand. This forest, this land, it recognizes that. It has been waiting for someone like you." The rest of the night passed with quiet conversation and shared stories. Elias learned more about Lyra, about her journey across worlds, and about the promise that had brought her here. He began to see that the inheritance of his uncle's cabin was not just about property, it was about responsibility. A responsibility to protect, to explore, and to survive where others could not. By dawn, Elias and Lyra were ready to explore further. The forest had shown its first signs of awareness, and Elias had tasted the thrill of human ingenuity in action. He understood, finally, why humans had been entrusted with this world. They could adapt, they could survive, and they could thrive where others failed. And as the first light of the new day touched the cabin, Elias knew that the adventure had only just begun. The forest was alive, the intruders were only the first challenge, and his human instinct to survive and overcome would guide him through whatever lay ahead. Elias rose from the ground, brushing off dirt and leaves. He looked at Lyra, determination burning in his eyes. "Let's see what else this forest has in store," he said. And with that, they stepped deeper into the trees, ready for the trials, wonders, and mysteries that awaited them in the living wilderness. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint electric hum of the awakened forest. Elias Thorne and Lyra walked along the winding path, their boots crunching over fallen leaves. The forest around them had calmed since the previous night's encounter, but Elias could feel a tension lingering in the air, like the quiet before a storm. "They'll come back," Lyra said softly, her eyes scanning the dense trees ahead. Elias nodded, tightening his coat against the morning chill. "I know, they won't give up so easily." Lyra glanced at him, a faint smile on her lips. "That's why humans are special. You think differently, you improvise, you survive where others fail. They don't understand that yet." Elias said nothing, but he thought about the intruders from last night. Pale, tall, and seemingly intelligent, they had relied on technology and strength. They had underestimated the forest and underestimated him. That mistake had saved their lives. The forest seemed alive with energy as they moved deeper. Vines shifted gently underfoot, guiding them along safe paths. Birds with metallic-colored feathers circled above, keeping watch. Small creatures peeked from behind trunks, their eyes reflecting a cautious intelligence. Elias realized that the forest was no longer just a backdrop. It was a partner, responding to every movement, every thought, every instinct. "I think it trusts you," Lyra said, nodding toward the vines that had formed a protective wall on either side of the path. Elias smiled faintly. "I hope so. I don't want to make a mistake that costs us everything." The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a strange, metallic scent. Elias froze, sensing danger before he even saw it. High above the treetops, a shadow passed, sleek ships glinting in the sunlight, moving faster than anything he had seen before. The outsiders had returned, and this time they were prepared. "They've brought reinforcements," Lyra whispered. "They won't leave without taking what they want, and they will try to control the forest themselves." Elias felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. He had survived storms, wild animals, and hunger, but this was something different. These beings were not from this world, and yet they underestimated him. That would be their mistake. As the ships descended, the forest reacted. Trees twisted, roots shifted, and vines shot upward like living walls. Elias felt the energy of the forest running through him, guiding his instincts. He could sense the best paths, the safest places, the areas where the forest would fight for him. "They think they can control it with machines," Elias said, his voice low but firm. "Let's show them why they can't," Lyra nodded. "I'll follow your lead. Remember, the forest responds to humans in ways it does not respond to them. Use that. Trust yourself." The outsiders landed, emerging from their ships with sleek, weaponized suits. They moved with precision, scanning the forest for weaknesses. Elias could see the hesitation in their eyes as the vines shifted, the trees bent, and the ground itself seemed to rise against them. Elias took a deep breath. He had learned one thing in the wilderness: survival depended on thinking, not strength. He moved quickly, using the forest to his advantage. A branch snapped, drawing one intruder's attention, only for a vine to sweep across, knocking their scanners offline. Another intruder tried to advance, but the forest rose in response, roots wrapping around their legs, forcing them back. Lyra moved beside him, guiding his hands, helping him channel the forest's energy. Together, they became a seamless team, unpredictable and unstoppable. The outsiders faltered, their technology useless against the living, intelligent forest. "They're not ready for this," Elias muttered, a spark of pride in his voice. "They think we're weak, but humans are different." Hours passed in a tense battle of strategy and instinct. Elias guided the forest to block paths, create diversions, and protect them from the intruders' weapons. Lyra watched with admiration as Elias improvised at every turn, predicting the outsiders' movements and turning the forest into a living trap. The aliens tried to force the forest into submission, firing energy beams and deploying machines, but nothing worked. The forest responded only to humans. Every attempt to control it failed, and every failure made Elias and Lyra stronger. Finally, the outsiders retreated to their ships, regrouping in the sky. Elias watched them disappear into the distance, his heart still racing. He had faced a force far superior in technology, but he had survived, and the forest had survived with him. Lyra approached, her eyes shining with admiration. "You see, humans always find a way. That's why your uncle trusted you. That's why I came here. We survive where others cannot. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. The forest, alive and protective, pulsed around them like a living heartbeat. He realized that his inheritance was more than a cabin. It was a challenge, a test, and a gift. The forest had chosen him, and he had proven himself worthy. "Do you think they'll come back?" Elias asked, glancing toward the horizon. "Maybe," Lyra said, "but they will never understand humans. They cannot predict us, they cannot control us, and they cannot survive like we can. That is our advantage." Elias looked around at the forest, feeling a connection he had never known. He could sense the energy, the life, and the intelligence within it. It was alive, and it responded to him. He understood, finally, why humans were special. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most adaptable, the most unpredictable, the most resilient. As the day faded into evening, Elias and Lyra returned to the cabin. The forest calmed around them as if approving their victory. They sat by the fireplace, exhausted but exhilarated. "You've done well," Lyra said, breaking the silence. "The forest recognizes your strength, your intelligence, your courage. Humans are unique. That is why we survive and why others fail." Elias leaned back, letting the warmth of the fire wash over him. He thought about the intruders, their arrogance, and their failure. He thought about the forest, alive and protective, responding only to him. And he thought about Lyra, a reminder that humans were not meant to survive alone, they thrive together. "This is only the beginning," Elias said quietly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, the forest is just the first challenge. Others will come, seeking what we have. But now you know the truth. Humans are special, and together we can face anything." Elias closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the forest around him. The trees, the vines, the animals, they were all part of a system that recognized human ingenuity. He understood now that survival was not just about strength. It was about thinking, adapting, and using every resource at his disposal. The night passed in quiet reflection. Elias and Lyra spoke little, but their minds were active, planning, preparing, and anticipating the challenges to come. They knew the outsiders would return, and they knew the forest would protect them. But they also knew that survival would require more than instinct. It would require courage, creativity, and the unpredictable brilliance that only humans could offer. By morning, Elias was ready. The forest had shown its first signs of awareness, and he had tested his abilities in real combat. He had seen firsthand why humans were feared and respected in the galaxy, not for power, but for adaptability, intelligence, and the ability to overcome impossible odds. "Let's see what else this forest has in store," he said, standing and stretching. Lyra smiled, ready at his side. "Yes, let's explore further. There are secrets here waiting to be discovered, and humans, we are meant to find them." Elias felt a thrill of excitement. The cabin was no longer just a place to live. It was a gateway to adventure, knowledge, and survival. The forest was alive. The outsiders were only the first challenge, and his human instinct to adapt and overcome would guide him through whatever lay ahead. Together, they stepped into the forest once more, ready to face the mysteries, dangers, and wonders that awaited them. The living wilderness pulsed around them, alive and watchful, and Elias knew that with human ingenuity and courage, nothing could stop them. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The forest had calmed since the encounter with the outsiders, but the energy of the awakened land still hummed beneath Elias' feet. Each step he took seemed to pulse with life, and he could feel the intelligence of the forest around him. Lyra walked beside him, silent but alert, her sharp eyes scanning the trees as they approached the cabin. "This place feels different," Elias said, pushing open the cabin door. "I've been here for days, but it's like something is calling me." Lyra nodded. "Your uncle left more than notes and maps. He left tools, devices, and secrets. Things he discovered here, things no one else can understand, and now it's your turn." Elias ran his hand along the rough wooden walls, remembering his uncle's journals and sketches. The cabin felt alive, in a way similar to the forest. There was energy here, a presence that seemed to guide him toward something hidden. "Where do we start?" Elias asked. Lyra pointed toward a section of the cabin wall that appeared ordinary but had subtle markings etched into the wood. "Start here. Your uncle left clues. Follow them carefully." Elias knelt, examining the wall. At first glance it was just wood, but under closer inspection, he noticed symbols carved in a pattern, triangles, circles, and lines forming shapes that seemed familiar from his uncle's notebooks. He pressed one of the triangles lightly. There was a click, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside were metallic devices unlike anything Elias had seen before. Smooth, silver objects etched with glowing symbols rested neatly on velvet. He picked one up cautiously. The device hummed faintly as if it recognized him. Lyra leaned closer. These devices were part of an ancient system, left behind by a species long gone. They interact with life, energy, and consciousness. Most beings cannot activate them. "Humans can," Elias frowned. "Why humans?" "Because," Lyra said, "we improvise, we adapt. We think in ways machines and other species cannot. Your uncle knew that. That is why he left these for you. Only a human could unlock their potential." He set the device down and explored further. Behind another panel, he discovered a star map etched into a glowing surface. Points of light marked systems, planets, and locations unknown to current galactic charts. Some of the points pulsed faintly, as if alive. "These aren't just maps," Lyra said, pointing. "They're guides. Your uncle charted locations where humans can thrive, places that respond to our adaptability. Others can try to explore them, but they will fail." Elias felt a thrill of excitement. Humans were truly unique in this galaxy. The outsiders he had faced had power, technology, and weapons, but they lacked creativity and intuition. That gap gave humans an advantage no one could match. "Look here," Lyra said, pressing a section of the map. A holographic image appeared, projecting a landscape that resembled the forest around them. Symbols and lines traced paths, showing hidden locations, safe zones, and areas of danger. Elias studied the display, trying to absorb every detail. "So my uncle planned for this, for humans to survive here," Lyra nodded. "Yes, and now it's your turn to continue his work. These devices, these maps, are tools, but the real power comes from you. Your decisions, your courage, and your ability to think in ways no one else can." For hours, Elias and Lyra explored the cabin's hidden chambers. Each room revealed something new. Devices that could manipulate energy, tools that could sense life, and panels that responded only to human touch. Every discovery reinforced what Elias had begun to understand. Humans were built to adapt, to survive, and to thrive where others would fail. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Lyra turned to Elias. "There is one more thing," she said, her voice serious. "Your uncle discovered a signal, something that can connect to other human colonies, but it hasn't been activated in decades. If we do it, it could bring others here, allies who understand human strength." Elias considered the weight of her words. Activating the signal could be dangerous. The outsiders might detect it, and it could bring more conflict. But the potential benefits were enormous. Humans working together could unlock the full power of this planet, and perhaps even the forest itself. "We should do it," he said finally. "If humans can survive here, they deserve a chance to explore this world. And if the forest is with us, we can protect them." Lyra smiled, impressed by his decisiveness. Together, they worked to activate the signal. The device responded to Elia's touch, glowing brighter as he aligned the symbols and followed his instincts. Lyra guided him, helping to interpret the alien language of the controls. Slowly, a beam of light shot upward, connecting with distant satellites and networks beyond the planet. A pulse ran through the forest, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then the trees, vines, and moss seemed to shimmer in approval, responding to the signal that recognized human ingenuity. "It's working," Lyra whispered. Elias felt a surge of pride. The forest, the cabin, the devices, They all acknowledged humans' unique abilities. He realized that survival was never about brute force. It was about thinking, adapting, and using the resources around you in clever ways. Humans had done that since their earliest days, and now that legacy continued here, on a distant world. As night fell, the forest seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm, glowing faintly under the light of the twin moons. Elias and Lyra sat on the cabin steps, exhausted but exhilarated. "Your uncle believed in humans," Lyra said softly, "and now I believe in you. We can unlock what others cannot. We can survive, thrive, and protect this planet." Elias looked around at the glowing trees, the humming devices, and the quiet strength of the cabin. He felt a connection deeper than he had ever known. This inheritance was not just a place, it was a challenge, a legacy, and an opportunity. "We have to be careful," Elias said. "The outsiders won't give up, and there may be more challenges ahead." Lyra nodded. "Yes, but we can face them. Together we understand human strength. And the forest, it responds to us in ways it will never respond to them." Elias closed his eyes, thinking about the journey ahead. The cabin, the devices, and the forest were only the beginning. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and creative, and those qualities would guide them through the dangers and mysteries of this world. The night deepened, and a soft glow filled the cabin, illuminating the devices and maps. Elias and Lyra planned their next steps carefully, knowing that every decision could mean survival or failure. "This is more than inheritance," Elias said quietly. "It's a responsibility. We have to protect this place, explore it, and unlock its secrets." Lyra smiled. "And we will. Humans always find a way. That is why we survive." The hours passed and the cabin remained alive with energy. Elias could feel the pulse of the forest, the intelligence of the devices, and the weight of his uncle's legacy. He understood now that humans were not meant to be ordinary. They were meant to explore, adapt, and overcome. By dawn, Elias and Lyra were ready. The forest outside the cabin shimmered with anticipation, and the devices hummed in response to their presence. They were no longer just survivors. They were explorers, pioneers, and guardians of a world that recognized human ingenuity. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of possibility. The journey ahead would be difficult, filled with unknown dangers, but he was ready. Humans thrived in the face of the impossible, and now, on this distant planet, that truth would be tested once again. "Let's see what the forest and the cabin have for us next," Elias said, standing and stretching. Lyra nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "Yes, the secrets are here waiting, and humans, we are meant to discover them." With that, they stepped forward together, ready to uncover the mysteries, face the challenges, and prove once again that humans were not just survivors. They were exceptional. The forest pulsed with life as Elias Thorne and Lyra prepared for the day ahead. The events of the past weeks had changed everything. The cabin was no longer just a home. It was a command center, a repository of secrets, and a symbol of human ingenuity. The devices left behind by Elias' uncle hummed softly, responding to his presence as if acknowledging his growing mastery. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes scanning the distant horizon where the sky met the mountains. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "The outsiders won't give up. They want what we've discovered, but this time they'll face more than just a forest." Elias nodded. He had faced danger before, but now he understood the full scope of what he controlled. The forest, the devices, and their own intelligence combined to make humans unpredictable and powerful. They would need every advantage, and humans had more than any other species in the galaxy. "They underestimate us," Elias said, his voice firm. "They don't know what humans are capable of." The morning passed with preparation. Elias and Lyra checked the devices, aligning symbols and activating energy fields that enhanced the forest's responsiveness. Vines shifted and roots rearranged themselves, forming hidden barriers and creating vantage points among the trees. Animals moved in synchronized patterns, serving as scouts and messengers. By midday, a low hum vibrated through the air. Elias looked up to see the outsiders' ships approaching once more. This time, they were larger, faster, and heavily armed. They descended with precision, deploying troops in armored suits that shimmered in the sunlight. "They think technology will win," Elias said, tightening his grip on a wooden staff reinforced with one of the devices. "They have no idea how unpredictable humans can be." Lyra moved to his side. "Remember what we've learned. Humans improvise, humans adapt. Humans survive where others fail. We will show them why." The first contact came quickly. A group of outsiders advanced toward the cabin, attempting to breach the forest's defenses. Vines rose from the ground, forming walls and entangling the intruders. Trees bent strategically, creating obstacles and channels that guided the outsiders into carefully chosen paths. Elias moved like water through the forest, guiding the defenses, predicting the outsiders' movements, and improvising strategies on the fly. He activated devices that projected illusions, masked their presence, and created energy barriers. Every action he took was unpredictable, confusing the intruders and forcing them to retreat repeatedly. Lyra supported him, coordinating the forest's responses and signaling paths through hidden clearings. Together, they became a seamless team, merging human intuition with the living ecosystem around them. The battle escalated. Outsiders deployed advanced weaponry, trying to cut down the forest and break through their defenses. Yet every attempt failed. The forest adapted to their tactics, creating traps, rerouting pathways, and using its natural resources to protect its human allies. Vines snaked around vehicles, roots lifted to block paths, and birds and small creatures distracted and confused the enemy. Elias realized that the forest was not just defending them, it was enhancing human capability. Every movement, every decision, and every improvisation magnified their strength. Humans were not just surviving, they were thriving, turning the wilderness into a strategic partner. Hours passed. The outsiders grew frustrated, their precision and technology rendered ineffective by human unpredictability. Elias and Lyra moved through the chaos, rescuing trapped creatures, guiding forest responses, and using devices to manipulate energy and light. The forest pulsed with intelligence, responding only to humans and amplifying their ingenuity. Finally, the outsiders made a desperate push toward the cabin. Elias and Lyra knew this was the moment to strike decisively. He activated a device that sent a controlled pulse through the forest, energizing the vines, roots, and trees to move in perfect coordination. The ground itself seemed alive, shifting and rising to form barriers, channeling the outsiders into narrow paths where their movements could be anticipated. Lyra used another device to amplify illusions and reflections, confusing the intruders further. Energy beams bounced off invisible shields, and the forest seemed to anticipate every tactic. The outsiders realized too late that humans were not only unpredictable, they were clever, resilient, and perfectly adapted to the environment they were trying to conquer. Elias moved swiftly, guiding the final defense. Vines entangled the remaining intruders, roots lifted and swept away their machinery, and the forest's creatures scouted and misdirected them. One by one, the outsiders were forced to retreat, abandoning their equipment and fleeing to their ships. When the last ship vanished beyond the horizon, Elias and Lyra stood together, exhausted but victorious. The forest had responded flawlessly, recognizing their presence and protecting them in ways no other species could have orchestrated. Lyra looked at Elias, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've done it. Humans always find a way. That's why your uncle trusted us and why the forest responded to you. This is what humans do best: adapt, improvise, survive, and overcome." Elias smiled faintly, feeling a deep sense of pride. The forest had chosen them, the devices had recognized their presence, and the outsiders had learned a hard lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. He turned to the cabin, reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. The maps, the devices, and the journals had all guided him, but it was his own instincts, courage, and creativity that had made the difference. He realized that humans were not just survivors, they were pioneers, capable of shaping their environment in ways no other species could. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "The forest has secrets still," she said, "and other challenges will come, but now you know the truth. Humans are special, we adapt, we survive, we thrive." Elias nodded. "And now we can protect this place, explore its mysteries, and unlock the knowledge my uncle left behind. Humans are meant to discover, to create, and to endure." As night fell, the forest glowed softly under the twin moons. The cabin hummed with energy, the devices pulsed faintly, and the trees seemed to whisper in approval. Elias and Lyra sat on the steps, looking out at the living wilderness that had become both their protector and ally. "You know," Elias said, breaking the silence, "the outsiders thought they could control everything. But they forgot one thing: humans are unpredictable. That's why we survive. That's why we thrive." Lyra smiled. "Exactly. We are the spark that the universe cannot predict. And now, we've proven it here, on this world." The following days were spent exploring the deeper parts of the forest. Elias and Lyra discovered hidden groves, ancient ruins, and devices left by the long-extinct species that had once inhabited the planet. The forest guided them, showing pathways, signaling dangers, and even offering resources. Humans, they realized, were uniquely capable of interacting with this ecosystem, shaping it, and unlocking its full potential. One day, they found a chamber deep within the forest. Inside was a device that projected holographic images of human colonies across the galaxy. The signal they had activated earlier was now visible to other humans, and Elias realized the full implications. Humans from distant worlds could now travel here, bringing knowledge, tools, and allies. "This is just the beginning," Elias said, his voice filled with determination. "Other humans will come, and together we will unlock the full potential of this world." Lyra nodded. "And the outsiders will never understand. They will never predict us. Humans will always find a way." The final test came when a storm swept through the mountains, threatening the forest with fire and destruction. Elias and Lyra moved swiftly, guiding the forest to protect itself. Vines formed fire breaks, streams were diverted to contain flames, and creatures worked in harmony to safeguard key areas. Their efforts were instinctive, unpredictable, and effective. The storm passed, leaving the forest stronger and more vibrant than before. Elias stood atop a ridge, looking out over the forest. The cabin glowed behind him, the devices pulsing softly, and the trees stretched as far as the eye could see. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment, pride, and connection. Humans had survived, adapted, and overcome. Lyra joined him, her expression calm and confident. "Your uncle believed in humans," she said. "Now you've proven it. The forest, the cabin, the planet itself, it recognizes us. Humans are exceptional, and we will continue to thrive." Elias nodded. "We will protect this place, explore its secrets, and ensure that humans continue to survive, no matter what challenges come." The night settled over the forest, calm and luminous. Stars reflected off the twin moons, casting a gentle light on the living wilderness. Elias and Lyra knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but they were ready. Humans were not just survivors. They were explorers, pioneers, and guardians of a world that recognized their brilliance. As they returned to the cabin, Elias felt a surge of determination. Humans had proven themselves again. They had faced superior technology, unpredictable dangers, and the unknown, and they had triumphed. "Let's see what tomorrow brings," Elias said, his voice firm. Lyra smiled. Whatever it is, humans will find a way. That's who we are, that's why we survive. Together they stepped into the cabin, ready to rest, plan, and prepare for the adventures yet to come. The forest pulsed around them, alive, intelligent, and protective. And Elias knew one thing for certain. Humans were exceptional, and nothing in the universe could change that. The adventure had reached a temporary end, but the story of human resilience, creativity, and courage would continue, on this world, across the stars, and wherever humans dared to explore. Humans had survived. Humans had thrived. And humans would continue to prove, in every corner of the galaxy, that their spirit was unmatched.